Hello, I'm David Holm, and we'd like to welcome you this morning to a new thing that we're doing as the West Virginia Baptist Convention family. It's called Family Talks. And Family Talks is a weekly opportunity that we have to have a conversation with pastors and church leaders from around our West Virginia Baptist Convention family, just to take a look at some of the creative things that they're doing to reach out into their communities with the love of Christ. So today, to kick things off, we are very pleased to have Pastor Phil Wayman, who is the senior pastor at Clarksburg Baptist Church, and Pastor Josh Weddle, who is the associate pastor for Next Generations at Clarksburg Baptist Church. And so, guys, during the last several months, you have really had an exciting and creative presence online. And I just thought maybe you might want to share a little bit about what you've done, what you've been aiming to do, what your vision is for the future. Just anything that you might have to share with our convention family today.
And Josh, you want to take that question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been unique and exciting, and we've had to definitely be creative. But we've been able to pick up on other things that other churches are doing too, and really just had to keep things fresh every step of the way. Try to realize what's working, what's not working, and just continue to be creative. But some of the things we've been able to do, obviously our Sunday morning service, we've been able to live stream on Facebook Live, and we've had pretty excellent feedback with that, with getting our families connected on there. A couple other things we've been able to do are our CBC TV series on Wednesday nights, where me and Phil have got together and covered some different topics and kind of approached them with a biblical approach and response. And we've been able to tackle some cool things. Like right now we're going through a series called Marriage Through the Years, where we've been able to have some different guests featured every Wednesday night. And we've talked through marriage from an engagement point of view, a 2 years point of view, 12 years into marriage. And then we're going to be wrapping that up with a 25 plus years of marriage this week. So we've been able to do that and some other cool things. In terms of our youth stuff and kids stuff, we've been able to push out online content like kids church videos. With our youth group, we've been able to do Sunday night Zoom calls as well as live devotions. And we've been able to connect through some different weekly competitions and things like that as well. We've been posting Friday night guest devotionals, which David, we actually had the honor of having you do one of those. So that was a cool way to provide some online content with some other familiar faces who could bring a fresh perspective and something cool to our church. So we've been posting those on Friday evenings, and we've been trying to follow up with emails and texts regarding the sermons and the different things that we've done just to keep people connected. And I think Phil's going to hit this a little later on too. We've tried to, from the start, make sure what we're doing is allowing people to stay connected and engage with each other, because that's really going to be, the strength of the church being online. There's millions and millions and millions of things people can go look at online in terms of content. So, what we need to make sure we're providing as the church is something for people to get engaged and connected. So I don't know, Phil, if you had anything else you wanted to kind of snowball into those things.
Yeah, basically we've been throwing everything up against the wall to see what would stick. And we have, changed our approach over the last couple months and tried some different things. We were doing some different things that we ended up, we were doing a family devotion with me and my family for a couple weeks, and we found out it just was a little bit too much for us to be able to continue to. So that's been part of it. But trying to find things that we can do to connect to people. And another thing that I can't stress the importance of is, and this might not be intuitive, but the online giving has been a real godsend during this time. That's something that we started years ago trying to push, and we had a pretty good percentage of people that were giving online. But because of that, we haven't maybe had the difficulties that some churches have had because over 50% of our people already were giving online, and some, with reoccurring giving that just happens anyway. So that would be a big tool that I think every church should have. And I know smaller churches, it's harder for them to find ways to do this, but that online giving piece has been a really big part of maintaining the future.
Sure. I think one of the things that's really impressed me about what you guys have done is, you might have started the online things because it was just necessary because, we weren't able to meet together. But as I've watched your stuff and as I know what I've seen of what you're planning for the days to come, that this hasn't been just something that you have come up with just to fill a gap that you have the intention of doing away with once you're back meeting together. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're looking at this as a long-term pivot in approach. Obviously, we feel like it's ideal for people to be present in the building, but we can't ignore the fact that people will be slow to coming back because of high risk factors. And frankly, because our in-person services are going to be different. We're looking at most likely starting in a week or two, but it's going to be different. There's not going to be children's programs. The youth aren't going to be meeting in the same ways. So really in the near future, and really it could end up, depending on how everything happens, it can end up being a long-term approach of viewing the church as a hybrid church for the future, having high quality online and in-person services. We've looked at the statistics and read a lot of different leaders' viewpoints on this, and I don't know what it is in our state, but across the country, it looks like it's about 20 or 30% of congregations are what is coming back in the building as far as so far this month. And if projections are right about this virus, we could see a reflare up in the fall. So we have to be ready for that. We can't just sit back and say, well, everything's going to come back to normal in just a month, and which I hate. In the beginning of this whole thing, I think we all thought when we get back to church, it's going to be a big party and we're going to throw this, we're going to have more, it'd be like an Easter Sunday attendance and everybody's going to be back in the building. But for us, I think it's going to be a long time before we have 220 people back in our sanctuary.
Right. And I know that you've not started meeting together again. You're still waiting for that. But one of the things that has really impressed me is something that you call house parties. And you started that this week. And it's not just a phase into meeting together again, but you have a longer term vision for this, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes along with what we just said is if families aren't going to be back in the near future because there's no children's programs, if seniors can't come back because of the high risk factors, then we have to make a way to make church safe and possible for people that can't come back, because we can't just leave them to the side. And like we've talked about, connection is what sets the local church apart from them just watching a TV program about a Bible lesson or something like that. So what we've done is we have made a way for people to get together that feel comfortable. We want to make sure that they're not feeling shamed or anything like that, because it's a strange time, and there are legitimate safety precautions that need to be taken into account. But what we've done is we've encouraged people to get together with one or two families and watch the service together, and then we've provided discussion and follow-up questions for them that go along with the service. So it's kind of a lot like having a life group in your house for after the service. And then we encourage them to eat together, because we think that's been, obviously Baptists like to do that,
right.
But I think throughout history, breaking bread together has been an important thing. There's something special about having someone in your house and having that hospitality that I think we lost for a while. And hopefully we've learned that it's really important for us to have that connection. And I think, honestly, if our church, which so far, we had quite a few of our house parties on Sunday. We had one in our house, even though I was here up at the church, and I was able to come back and fellowship a little bit and eat lunch with them. And but if our church takes advantage of this, I really think it'll be something that changes our church for a long time to come. Just that connection and vulnerability. And I know, and I'm not a super extrovert person. And I imagine it would take a long time for me to sit down and talk with another family about spiritual things, about prayer, like we talked about this last week. But this accelerates that. If we'll sit down, invite people over, and we get down to the nitty gritty of like, hey, I am a Christian, you're a Christian. We ought to be able to talk about this rather than just talk about sports and the weather and that kind of stuff. So we're really excited to see how people respond. And so far, it looks like it's been good, and we're hoping it continues to pick up steam a little bit.
Good. Now, Josh, you preached yesterday, and so the groups I understand that met yesterday sort of took their cue for their discussion from your sermon yesterday. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're trying to push out weekly discussion questions based on the sermon. So just some different things to prompt some more discussion with the families and who are meeting together in homes, and just giving them an opportunity to be a little more open and honest and vulnerable about a lot of those things together. I know putting those questions together this past week, just looking over them, like, man, these are really some things that could break down some walls and give people some really cool opportunities to be honest and grow together. So yep.
Yeah, they definitely weren't softball questions where Jesus is the answer to every one of the questions. It was, how have you struggled with prayer? What is really, let's be honest about, do you enjoy prayer, and things like that? And if not, why not? And that's, what Josh's whole message was about. And asking these dangerous questions, these dangerous prayers about, search me, Lord, break me, send me. And I know Tori, my wife, kind of led a discussion with the people that came over our house, and she talked about how it was really a good time of being open and honest. And it forces us to peel off the mask of, our smile and everything's fine, to get past that stuff and say, hey, we're struggling too. And these things are, things that we experience as well.
That's some exciting stuff, and stuff that I think really is going to, in the long term, really have some spiritual benefits for people in your church, but also for people who you might have picked up along the way, who really have never had any kind of attachment or any kind of participation in church or spiritual matters for that matter. So that's just exciting to me to listen to all these things that you've got going on. If someone else in our West Virginia Baptist Convention family who might watch this and be curious about what you're doing and maybe have a few more questions, would it be okay for them to contact you, and you guys could have a conversation?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, you can check out our different stuff on Instagram and Facebook. Our kids ministry is CBC Kids. Our youth ministry is CBC Student Life. Our church pages are on Clarksburg Baptist Church on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And you also can download our app in the app stores and look that over and see if, that's something that would benefit you guys. And we can answer some questions. I don't know. We have a really awesome team at the church of people that have come together.
Absolutely.
And Josh and I get to be the face of it, but we have a great team that really has continually upgraded our system over this time, and asked the question how we can make the quality better and make it more watchable and the sound better and all that kind of stuff. And the behind the scenes people have been invaluable. And one thing I wanted to mention that didn't come up before, when we were talking about, kind of what the response has been with from congregants and church people, people that we've picked up. One of our core strategies from the very beginning was to make sure we differentiated ourselves from, just people that provide content online. Not that those things are bad, but the church is important. And I think what separates the local church from someone that just gives a devotion is that connection part. Because right now media, along with other sermon archives and things like that, there's unlimited amount of content out there that people can watch, but engagement and connection has been what we've endeavor to do from the very beginning of this, kind of shift. We try and shout out people's names. Josh will get up normally in the beginning and just welcome people and let them know that they're seen and we understand that they're present with us, even if they're not in person. We ask questions and ask people to respond in the comments. I know a lot of people are worried about, well, we're not allowed to talk in church. But we think that that's important because that's the piece that we miss when not having in-person services. So we like to engage people and ask comments. We ask people to share the post because that's free advertisement and not for our church, but for the gospel, to get that message out there. There's so much, hardship and trouble out there. It's a wonderful thing to be able to share the gospel. And we, especially on the CBC TV, we are even more interactive, and we kind of handle that tongue-in-cheek wise as more like a TV show, kind of engage the people, but we read the comments and we interact with people. And we feel like that's the best way during this time of people feeling isolated and alone, to allow people to feel heard and seen. And it seems to work pretty well. On a Sunday morning, we average probably about 100 comments or so, with people just greeting each other in the comments and asking and answering the questions, 30 to 50 shares. It seems to be working. We've kept, once summer hits, it's always a little bit of a dip. I think everyone that's ever been in church, has seen that. But before summer hit, we were averaging 150 live viewers on a Sunday morning. And even we've gained people from other states and other countries that have been watching along with us, which is really cool. And then also getting rewatches as well. So we think that important part is to ask ourselves, how can we engage rather than how can we get people to watch? And that's really probably a question that we should have been asking maybe more while people were just watching, but they were sitting in the pews. And how can we get people to engage, and how can we get them to participate rather than just be an attender of a church? I just wanted to throw that last piece in there.
No, that's
yeah,
I appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
No,
I was just going to kind of piggyback on, I know Phil would probably agree. It honestly, going into the online switch in like mid-March or whenever it was, we were all a little bit scared about it. It was kind of, going into the unknown. But I know especially that first month or the first few weeks, it really was exciting. Phil's talking about the engagement and the connection and the comments and things like that. I remember coming away from some of the Sunday morning stuff or the Wednesday night things that we were doing and just feeling like, man, it feels like our church is growing right now, because like Phil said, on a regular Sunday morning, you might not hear so many different voices heard, but, we're seeing so many interactions and connection in the comments that, and like Phil said as well about, so many people sharing it out to their feeds. We were seeing people that I saw people in the first few weeks join that I was able to call out and say, hey, we're glad you joined us. There were people I've maybe worked with or been around in different contexts here in West Virginia who maybe don't have the opportunity to come to a Sunday morning service or just haven't really made it a priority. So it's been a really cool way to reach other people. But yeah, it honestly has felt like the church has become more alive through this time. Like we've kind of rallied around this.
I've quoted this probably, 20 times in the last couple of months, but Carrie Newhoff says it's really good that churches are doing online stuff now because it's where the culture has been for the last 10 years. And kind of convicting to think about it in that way. But, this is where people are at. They're on their phone all day, every day, and, to their detriment, some, but we can shout out the darkness, or we can take a light into the darkness. And that's what we're trying to do.
Right. If they're already there, we better do what we can to get there. If I could just speak to one more thing that you guys had talked about a minute ago, just that there are many ways other people could connect and figure out what we're doing at CBC. I know I could probably speak for, me and Phil both that I'd love to, stay connected with anybody else who has questions and don't want to pretend we're experts on this. Like we've had good connection and good interaction, but this has been really, really hard and difficult. You could ask Phil, I've probably had several moments of discouragement and feeling pretty down about some of this stuff, because I'm definitely a person, I love to be around people and things like that. And technology is not my strong suit. It's definitely not a gifting that I have, is doing ministry online. So it's definitely been, a learning process, and something we've had to just, constantly say, God, you're in control. Just, help us to be obedient and willing and to do our best. So I know I would love to stay connected with other people in the state and figure out what they're doing that's working, because, we've, like Phil said, we're throwing stuff up against the wall. Some things are working and some things aren't. And we're just having to figure that out the hard way.
The other thing, and I won't belabor this too long, but I think it's important, and Josh and I have talked about this too, that more than ever before, it's easy for us to fall into the performance-based, value in ourselves, because literally you have numbers that jump up and down, and if you go back and watch and you say something, you say something and it's like, oh man, 10 people just dropped off after I said that. It is kind of difficult, and Josh and I talked about this before. It's so easy for people to leave a online experience. They can just click off, and whereas they never would have gotten up and left if you were boring during a service. They would have just bared through it.
Right.
And that can be a lot of pressure. And ultimately, although we do try and make our online stuff the most quality, and make sure that we have something to say, and that we go over it, and it's a high value, that ultimately we have to just rely on the fact that we're just trying to please God. And whether people follow or like or click or share or all that kind of stuff, we're going to try our best, but ultimately we have to just remember we're really doing this for the audience of one, and to keep that in view.
Well, I want to throw in a personal note, because you all know that I travel around. I'm in a different church every Sunday, and I love worshiping with the different churches in the West Virginia Baptist Convention. But you guys are my pastors, because my family belongs to Clarksburg Baptist Church. And I just want to say that during this time that you guys have really ministered to me personally, but also to my family. And I just want to thank you for all the effort that you've put into this, and just want to really pray for you guys as you continue on. God's going to use you, has used you, and will continue to use you. So I really appreciate you joining me today for this kind of inaugural Family Talks. And I hope that in the future that those of you who are watching today will join us again as we continue to explore what's going on in the West Virginia Baptist Convention. So thank you guys. Stay safe and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, David. We love you guys.